This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to see you, sir.
Good as always to be with you, Roby.
I have a rough voice this morning, so I'm going to ask short, succinct, quick questions and let you do all the talking today, if that's all right with you.
Well, I had intended to turn the tables and ask you about polling, but I won't do that.
You can do that if you wish.
Oh, well, you can answer as briefly as you wish.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, let's begin with this. Let's talk about where you feel the state of the presidential race is today. If the votes were cast and collected and revealed tonight, who would win?
Roby, today I finally settled on the appropriate insight. I've got it. This is the most honest, profound truth I can give you. I don't know, and nobody knows. I was looking at the leading aggregators of polls, and one of them has Trump ahead, albeit except in Arizona by 1 point or so, in all of them. Another one has Harris ahead in the blue wall of the Midwest, which with Omaha would give her the victory, but all less than 1%. You just don't know, and it's all about who turns out and the demographics of what this electorate is going to look like. And the polls vary in Pennsylvania and Michigan. They can go 2 points either way, and I think, and that's what I do want to just make this point, and you can, of course, you know more about it than I do, but the polls are based in large measure on some assumptions about what the demographic breakdown of the electorate is going to be, and those are drawn in some measure from history, from the last election. And the last election was perhaps an aberration, and perhaps there's a lot of tougher guesswork at play in these polls than there is otherwise, and we could have, well, the story of the election could be that the polls are going through a state of volatility, and as is the electorate, and from the COVID election of the incredible turnout before, when voting was made easier, till now, with the Republicans and state legislatures having tightened restrictions. I believe we have to play the game. You know, I mean, we're going to have the election, and I have less idea, certainly less certainty about what we're going to get. It could be as close as it is, as it appears in the polls. It could break either way. And I think one of the things we're going to be talking about in the days after is how do we need to take stock of our polling. As a person who runs polls, who knows polls, I just wondered if you thought that might be so or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think our philosophy is the one you have to kind of go with on the science of it, is what happened last time. And until that changes, you don't really, affect your modeling that much. Otherwise, you're trying to predict what the voter turnout's going to be, and you just don't know. You have to kind of base.
Science wouldn't. Science goes on data, and so it doesn't take into account the fact that one group is going to turn out at greater levels in this election, and the groups that turned out last time in that demographic breakdown were based on many states where mail balloting was entirely permitted, drop boxes. It was a enormous turnout. Well, you know all that, and I just think, we're just going to have to play the game rather than know what's going to happen, but more than that, to really have any insight as to what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I would say too that you just with polling, you will see that a lot of what happens traditionally and historically continues to happen traditionally and historically. So it does change a little bit, but it's really around the edges.
So you think it's not going to be a major, but it doesn't need to be major.
Martin from Politico on our TV show this week, he said easily he thinks that the Republicans win back the Senate, the U.S. Senate, and it will be How far can they run up the score? The House thinks leans a little bit towards the Democrats, but it'll be tight. What do you think?
Well, I think I would agree with all that, except for the fact that I don't. I'm hesitant to make as I just explained, make any prediction about the presidency. But if I had to make I would say precisely what was that? You say that was Jonathan Martin?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, in the House, we don't have major shifts in the House in presidential elections by modern history. It's the midterms when after we elect some people and we get mad about what they've done, we have major shifts in midterms. But so the Republicans were not going to lose control and may gain the Senate if you believe what's the polls and the feel of Montana, and then you look at West Virginia. I'm resigned to Republican taking control of the Senate, but somehow through all of that, by 50.3 to 49.7, I feel like Harris. In the presidential race. But you have to be honest with yourself. Am I feeling that way? Are we feeling the way we're feeling because of our preferences? And also, people are reading polls that are different based on the websites they use, based on their personal prejudices, and talking to people based on their personal prejudices, and getting their media because based on their personal prejudices, which is one of the main cancers affecting our politics. So I'm just saying I don't know, but I think Jonathan Martin, and I believe he said if he had to say about the presidency, he had a vague lean Democrat, and he hedged substantially. Is that what you're saying?
Well, he basically on the presidential race, he said it's Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Throw out
Yeah.
the Sun Belt states. Just that the final decision will be who wins Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So those are the three states he's focused on, not the larger 7 or 9 states that might
You
be.
do know if Trump gets the Sun Belt ones and Harris gets those three, I believe that would be like 269, unless she also got that Omaha district.
Right.
And imagine go ahead.
Yeah.
Imagine the country with a person elected president with by 270 to 268, with the margin provided in 3 big Midwestern states by less than 1%, if the polls are right about that, by very close margins. And imagine what Trump and the MAGA nation might say about the credibility of those narrow returns in those 3 states. Might they say you've always had irregularities by the Democrats in Philadelphia and Milwaukee and in Detroit? I said on here a couple weeks ago, I wake up in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep worrying about this. But we got some wild times in the next days and weeks, I think, much like we had before, unless it breaks Trump's way and Trump wins and the Democrats just grumble about the Electoral College. They don't do the kind of fomenting of upheaval that the Trump people do. So just sit back and see what the truth is going to be.
Excuse me. All
Sure.
right, let's wrap up with this final question. We did get a ruling early last week that the medical marijuana votes will not be counted. They'll be on the ballot because the early voting had already started. The Arkansas Supreme Court ruled that the ballot title was misleading. It's a 4-3 decision, with 2 of the 4 being appointees of Governor Sarah Sanders, who is opposed to the medical marijuana issue. I'm not implying necessarily that there was some bias in that, but she did get a chance to select the justices that she might feel had the proper philosophy for her point of view. What's your take on that ruling? What's your take on what has come out after that ruling in terms of the spin on each side?
My take on that ruling is that I've got to I've got a nuanced view of that. My take on that ruling is that this amendment would have, should the United States decriminalize marijuana, it would instantly trigger this amendment's provisions as applying not just to medical, but to recreational. In other words, it would build in the current constitutionally set dispensary structure that we now have. And I think that's important enough when you're saying we're going to legalize recreational marijuana and these are the people who are going to be selling it. I think that probably should have been more prominently mentioned. And I think I always thought they needed a two-tier popular name to expand medical marijuana and to essentially decriminalize recreational marijuana should the federal government permit it. So I'm not greatly disagreeing, but here's the other thing I'm saying. I don't care how explicit and true and open and thorough these people were in this amendment. When Sarah Sanders puts two avowed opponents of the proposal on the Supreme Court, and she's already got a Republican base on the Supreme Court that does pretty much what she says, I think they're going to find a way to throw it off. They found almost contradictory ways to throw off these things that she and they are against. Bias, maybe you don't want to say bias. Our Supreme Court Sarah Sanders has a stranglehold on this state that I liken to that of a boa constrictor. She's just got her control wrapped tightly, squeezing this state, and that's just where we are. And both of these, these votes were known the minute those appointments were made, and if those appointments hadn't been made, then probably a couple of the Republicans who went over to join Karen Baker wouldn't have if they'd been needed. I think we have a totally politicized Supreme Court, and I think it's totally in the image of Sarah Sanders, and that's the way it's going to be. And there's not much way to do anything about that in the short term. You can't sue. You can't take the Supreme Court to the Supreme Court. I don't believe you can. I don't think you can. And I think you'd lose if you did. So I know you would. So that's the way I read it. I don't object. I think these things need to be more thorough and clear. I think this was a subtle or a veiled way to affect the recreational commerce, recreational marijuana commerce. That should have been more prominently mentioned, but I don't think it mattered in the end. This thing was off when the panel of judges was seated.
Are you saying that the decision was baked before the ruling came down?
I believe the word cooked, baked, set. You like the word baked. I've noticed you like to say that cake was baked, and that's a good metaphor. And yes, I believe that. I believe that cake was baked.
He's John Brummett. He always offers his opinions to us on the first of the week. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you.
All right, Hope you get feeling better. Hope that voice clears up. All right.